Rachel changed the locks while we were burying my Tommy. I came home from the cemetery in my black dress and watched this 28-year-old woman unlock my kitchen door. She had gone to the store during the funeral service. 10 minutes to pack your bags, old lady, she told me without looking up. This house belongs to me now. I could have cried or begged or reminded her that Tommy and I planted those roses by the fence when he was 7 years old. But I didn't. I just smiled a tiny smile. The kind I used to give people when I worked as a tax accountant for 35 years. She didn't know what she just started. Here's Tommy's will, Rachel said, pulling a paper from her coat pocket. I get everything. The house, his toy store business, his charity, every single thing. I took the paper carefully. My hands stayed calm. After working with numbers and papers my whole life, I knew how to stay steady even when my heart was breaking. The handwriting looked like Tommy's, but something felt wrong about the paper. It looked too new and too white. I know this is hard, Margaret, Rachel said in a fake sweet voice. But Tommy wanted me to have everything. I was his wife. I took care of him when he was sick. You're just... She stopped. Just what? Just his mother who raised him alone after his father died. Rachel thought I had been a simple bookkeeper my whole life. Tommy never told her the truth. He was proud of his mama, but he also knew some things should stay private. What Rachel didn't know was that I spent 35 years finding hidden money for the government. I caught people who cheated on their taxes. I found money that people tried to hide in secret accounts. I could follow money trails that went across the whole country. And now I was looking at a will that seemed fake. Tommy's toy store makes $1.8 million every year, Rachel said, looking at her phone like she was checking the weather. Tiny Treasure's toy shop has been growing bigger and bigger. He sells special toys to stores all over the state. Tiny Treasures, Tommy's special place. He started it in our garage 6 years ago, making wooden toys by hand. Now he had 3 stores and made toys for big companies too. And there's the Tommy Mitchell Children's Fund, Rachel continued. Another $1.8 million to help sick kids. Very nice. Very helpful. Very profitable. The Children's Fund. Tommy started it when he got cancer. He wanted to help other families pay for their kids' medicine and hospital bills. Every dollar was supposed to help families who couldn't afford doctors. Or that's what should have happened. You need to take your things by next Sunday, Rachel said. I'm having new locks put in tomorrow. Better ones with cameras. Can't be too careful with all this valuable stuff in here. I took a picture of the will with my phone. I was sneaky about it. Just a quick photo while pretending to give it back. 35 years of looking at important papers taught me to be careful. Where are you going to live? I asked quietly. Brandon is moving in on Monday, she said. My boyfriend. We've been together for 9 months. 9 months. Tommy had only been dead for 5 days. I see. Don't look at me like that, Margaret. Tommy knew about Brandon. We had separated before Tommy got sick. I only came back because it was the right thing to do. Because I'm a good person who takes care of people. A good person who had a boyfriend while her husband was dying, who changed the locks during the funeral, who was already bringing her boyfriend to sleep in Tommy's bedroom. The funeral was beautiful, I said softly. It was expensive, Rachel snapped back. $38,000. Lucky the Children's Fund can pay for funeral costs. Tommy would have wanted the nicest service. $38,000 for a funeral that should have cost maybe $12,000. I made a note in my head to check where that money really went. When people steal a little bit, they usually steal a lot. I need some time to find a new apartment, I said. You have until Sunday. Brandon doesn't want old pictures and memories around when he moves in. It makes him sad. Rachel walked around my house like she was shopping in a store, touching a lamp here, moving a picture there. Everything was hers now. Everything Tommy worked for. Everything he wanted to use to help sick children. Oh, Margaret, she called from the kitchen. I need you to take down all the pictures of Tommy. The ones in the living room and hallway and everywhere. It's not healthy for me to see his face all the time. I need to heal and move on with my life. Move on. 5 days after we buried her husband. I collected my clothes, my important papers, and my laptop. The laptop was old, but it still had special programs on it that could find hidden secrets in numbers and accounts. As I packed, I looked at that picture of the will again. The paper looked right and the handwriting looked right, but something was wrong with the ink. New ink looks different than old ink under special lights. "I'll call you about the children's fund," I told Rachel as I walked to my car. "Don't bother. I'm hiring professional people. Real business people who understand how things work today. No offense, but you're too old-fashioned." No offense taken. 'Cause Rachel was right. Things were different now than when I started working in 1989. Back then, finding hidden money was hard. People could destroy papers and burn receipts. But now in 2024, everything leaves traces. Every time money moves, it leaves footprints. Every paper has secret information hidden inside it. Every lie creates mistakes that can be found. Rachel thought she was dealing with a sad old lady who didn't understand computers. She was about to learn that I helped create the systems that caught people like her. Rachel called me 3 days later. "Margaret, we need to talk right now." I was sitting in my small new apartment near the library. My laptop was open, showing me the beginning of my investigation into that will. "Good morning, Rachel. Stop being polite. I know what you're doing. Calling the bank and bothering Tommy's business partners. It needs to stop right now." That was interesting. I hadn't called anyone yet. But someone was nervous enough to think I had. "I just want to understand Tommy's last wishes," I said calmly. "His last wishes are written down clearly. The will is legal. I had it approved by the court yesterday. Everything is mine. And if you keep bothering people, I'll call the police on you." "Call the police. Don't act innocent. You think I forged the will. You think I'm a criminal. You think your perfect Tommy couldn't possibly leave everything to his wife instead of his annoying mother." The mean words in her voice were shocking. 3 days ago she pretended to be sad. Now her mask was falling off. "Rachel, I just want Tommy's children's fund to keep helping sick kids. The fund is fine. Better than fine. I've already gotten into the bank accounts and started fixing how Tommy spent money. Some of his choices were honestly stupid. Gotten into the accounts. 3 days after Tommy died. What do you mean by fixing? None of your business. But since you're being nosy, I found lots of wasteful spending. Payments to companies that charge too much money. Tommy was too trusting and gave away too much to people who didn't deserve help. Can you tell me which companies?" "I don't owe you answers, Margaret. I don't owe you anything. You're not family anymore. You're just some old lady who can't accept that her son grew up and made his own life." Some old lady. There it was. She thought being old meant being stupid. "I understand you're stressed," I said. "I'm stressed because you won't leave me alone. Do you know what people are saying? That you're harassing a young widow. That you're trying to steal from me because you're jealous. That you're just another bitter old woman who hates seeing young people succeed." People were saying that already. 3 days after the funeral, and Rachel was already telling lies about me to others. "I'm not trying to cause problems." Good. Because Brandon is moving in tomorrow and I don't want him dealing with your drama. He's successful. He's smart. He doesn't need to deal with family problems. Brandon, the boyfriend moving into my son's house less than a week after the funeral. What kind of work does Brandon do? He works with computers. He makes programs and understands real business, unlike some people. He's helping me make the children's fund work better. Computer programs. Helping make the fund work better. How convenient. Rachel, I want you to know I'm not your enemy. I love Tommy. I want his charity to keep helping children. His charity is helping children. Me. I spent 3 years taking care of a dying man. I gave up my job, my friends, my whole future. I earned every dollar Tommy left me. Earned. Strange word to use. I'm sure you did care for him. Don't talk down to me. I know what you think. Poor gold digger married the sick toy store man for his money. Well, guess what? I love Tommy. And even if I didn't, I still earned everything just for cleaning up his messes when he was sick. The cruel words were terrible. Tommy fought cancer so bravely. He never complained or felt sorry for himself. He kept working to help other families even when he was so sick. I'm sure Tommy appreciated everything you did. He did. That's why he left me everything. That's why he wrote that will. That's why he made sure his mother wouldn't get a single penny. She was lying. Tommy would never cut me out completely. But more importantly, she was telling me details about the will that I never asked about. I should let you go, I said. You must have lots to do. I do. Including taking care of a very expensive house and running a charity the right way. For the first time ever, that money will go to people who actually deserve it. People who deserve it. The fund had always helped families with sick children. But Rachel's idea of deserving might be very different. Take care, Rachel. I will. And Margaret, this is your last warning. Stay away from Tommy's business. Stay away from the fund. Stay away from me. You have no legal rights, no claim to anything, and no right to interfere with Tommy's wishes. She hung up. I sat back and thought about what I learned. Rachel was defensive about the will. She got into the fund's bank accounts immediately. She was changing how money was spent. She had a boyfriend who worked with computers helping her fix operations. And she said something interesting. She said Tommy wrote the will. Not that he had a lawyer make it. Not that he signed it. That he wrote it himself. Handwritten wills are legal in North Carolina, but they're also easier to fake. I opened my laptop and looked at that picture more carefully. The hidden information in the photo told me when and where it was taken. But the will itself was about to tell me much more. That's when I saw the impossible information. The hidden data was impossible. I stared at my computer screen, checking the information 3 times. The photo showed that Rachel took the picture at 3:15 in the afternoon on October 18th. But the location information said she was at Office Depot when she took it. Office Depot. Not Tommy's house. Not a lawyer's office. An office supply store. The same day as Tommy's funeral. I called my old work friend Linda Chen. She had moved to the fraud investigation department after our office changed, but she still had access to the paper analysis lab. Margaret Mitchell. I thought you were enjoying retirement. I need help, Linda. It's personal. My son Tommy died last week. His wife showed me a will that feels wrong. The phone went quiet. Linda knew about Tommy's cancer. She had sent flowers when I took time off work during his last months. What kind of wrong? I need ink testing and handwriting analysis. Something doesn't feel right. Margaret, I can't run unofficial tests on family papers. This involves a $1.8 million fund for sick children. If I'm right, someone is stealing from families who need help with hospital bills. Another pause. Linda had grandchildren of her own. Send me the picture. I'll take an unofficial look. If something's there, we'll figure out the proper way to handle it. I sent the will photo through our old secure system we used for decades. While waiting, I started looking into Tiny Treasures Toy Shop's money records. As Tommy's mother and emergency contact, I still had access to some business systems. What I found made me feel sick. Over the past year and a half, there were 22 strange money transfers from business accounts. Each one for exactly $6,850. Each one marked as consulting fees or contract payments. Each one approved by Rachel Bennett Mitchell using her legal authority. $6,850. Just under the $7,000 limit that makes banks report suspicious activity to the government. Someone knew exactly how to steal money without getting caught. My phone buzzed. Linda. Margaret, you need to see this. The ink test shows modern chemicals that match 2024 manufacturing. The paper you photographed was written in the last month. The will says it's from 7 months ago. Then someone's lying. But there's more. The handwriting analysis shows pressure problems typical of forgery. Someone was copying another person's writing. They were good, but not perfect. Forgery. I suspected it, but hearing it confirmed felt like being punched. How sure are you? 94% confident. Good enough for court if you can prove the paper trail. Chain of evidence. The foundation of every case I ever built. Linda, I need you to check one more thing. Money transaction analysis for suspicious patterns. I'm sending account numbers now. Margaret, how deep does this go? I'm about to find out. After hanging up, I drove downtown and parked across from the hotel where Rachel was hosting a charity announcement party. According to social media, she was revealing plans for the Tommy Mitchell Children's Fund's expansion. I watched through my car window as she posed for photographers wearing a $12,000 designer purse and a $7,000 fancy watch. Both recent purchases according to her Instagram posts. Expensive jewelry for a widow on her dead husband's money. My phone rang. Linda again. The pattern analysis is damning. 22 transactions over 18 months. All just under federal reporting limits. Total amount stolen. $150,700. This is classic embezzlement, Margaret. $150,700 stolen from families with sick children. There's more, Linda continued. The authorization codes show the transfers came from 3 different internet addresses. 2 from the hospital where Tommy was treated and 1 from a home address. Can you trace the home address? Already did. It's registered to Rachel Bennett, Apartment 2C at 742 Maple Street. 742 Maple Street. I knew that address. It was a fancy building where rent started at $3,500 a month. Linda, I need to ask you something unofficial. Go ahead. If someone wanted to shut down a children's fund completely, how would they do it legally? Depends on the fund structure. If it's a private fund with 1 board member, they could vote to close it and move the money to another charity. Or to themselves if they set up the paperwork right. How long would that take if they had all the papers ready? Maybe 3 weeks. 3 weeks. Rachel had already been changing how money was spent for 4 days. I made my decision right there in that parking lot, watching my son's widow celebrate her inheritance while wearing stolen money. It was time to show her what 35 years of following money trails looked like. I spent the next week building a case file that would make prosecutors very happy. Every transaction Rachel made left digital footprints. Every lie she told created mistakes in the data. Every theft she committed made an electronic trail that pointed right back to her. The woman who called me an old-fashioned bookkeeper had no idea she was stealing from someone who helped design the systems that catch people like her. First, I traced the internet addresses. The hospital transactions were easy to explain. Rachel had legal access to fund accounts while taking care of Tommy. But the third address, 742 Maple Street, told a different story. Rachel had been accessing the children's fund from her personal apartment for 9 months. Long before Tommy died. Long before she had any legal right to touch that money. I compared those access times with Rachel's social media posts. On April 20th, she transferred $6,850 at 10:45 at night while posting Instagram stories from an expensive spa weekend in the mountains. On July 12th, she moved another $6,850 while taking pictures of dinner at a $175 per person restaurant. Each theft documented in real time by her own social media. But the internet traces were just the beginning. I got security camera videos from First Carolina Bank where Rachel had been making cash deposits. North Carolina law requires banks to keep security videos for 18 months. And my government work history still carried weight with security managers. The footage was devastating. 22 separate deposits, each for exactly $6,850 in cash. Rachel's face was clearly visible in every video. She even signed deposit slips with her own name. The woman was either very arrogant or very dumb. Maybe both. Next, I looked at the children's fund's spending patterns. Tommy had been very careful about records. Every dollar spent needed receipts, contracts, and proof that it helped real families. The fund had helped 742 families over 4 years, paying for medicine, rent help, and counseling. But Rachel's improved operations showed a different pattern. In the 4 weeks since Tommy's death, she'd approved payments to several new companies. businesses with generic names like Business Solutions LLC and Management Services Group. I traced these companies through North Carolina's Business Records website. Every single one had been created in the last 90 days. Every single one listed the same person as the owner. Brandon Cooper, Rachel's computer programmer boyfriend. Brandon wasn't just moving into Tommy's house. He was helping Rachel systematically steal from Tommy's children's fund. I called the Tiny Treasures Toy Shop board of directors and shared what I found. 3 retired business owners who had been Tommy's mentors were shocked to learn about the embezzlement. They immediately froze Rachel's access to company accounts and announced an emergency audit. Rachel's response was quick and panicked. She called me at 7:15 the next morning, screaming about harassment and lies. But between the curse words and threats, she revealed something interesting. "You have no idea what you're messing with, old woman. Brandon and I have been planning this transition for months. We're legitimate business people trying to make the fund more efficient. Planning for months while Tommy was dying. The audit will show everything is legal," she continued. "Every transaction, every expense, every payment has documentation and justification. I'm sure it does. And when this is over, I'm suing you. Brandon has lawyer friends. We'll destroy what's left of your sad reputation." Brandon had lawyer friends. Interesting. "Rachel, I just want Tommy's fund to keep helping sick children. It will help children. The right children. Children who actually deserve help instead of lazy people looking for handouts. The right children." Rachel was planning to completely change what the fund was supposed to do. After hanging up, I kept building my evidence file. Bank records, security videos, internet logs, social media posts, business papers, and technical analysis. By the end of the week, I had 847 pages proving systematic embezzlement and conspiracy to commit fraud. But I needed one more piece, something that would make the case absolutely perfect. I drove to Tommy's house, Rachel's house now, and parked across the street. At 2:45 in the afternoon, a white BMW pulled into the driveway. Brandon Cooper stepped out carrying a laptop bag and what looked like financial papers. I photographed him entering the house with my camera. At 3:55, Brandon and Rachel came out together, walking to Brandon's car while talking intensely. Rachel was carrying the same papers Brandon had brought. They drove to Trustmark Bank on Oak Street. I followed carefully and watched Brandon wait in the car while Rachel went inside. She came out 18 minutes later with empty hands. That evening, I checked the children's fund account activity. Another $6,850 had been transferred to Management Services Group at 4:22. The timing was perfect. Rachel had met with Brandon, reviewed papers, gone to the bank, and immediately authorized another fake payment. I had them completely caught. But Rachel was about to make an even bigger mistake. According to her social media, she was planning something special for the 1-month anniversary of Tommy's death. A charity gala, a public celebration of the Tommy Mitchell Children's Fund's new direction, 175 invited guests, local news coverage, a big speech by the grieving widow about continuing her late husband's work. Rachel was going to stand in front of Charlotte's business community and lie about stealing from sick children. In front of witnesses. With news coverage. While I sat in the audience with 847 pages of evidence proving every word was fraud. The woman had just made this very serious. And I was about to make it a federal case. Rachel appeared at my apartment at 10:45 on a Tuesday night, banging on my door like she wanted to break it down. I opened it to find her standing in the hallway, fancy clothes wrinkled, makeup smeared, hands shaking. "You," she started. "Good evening, Rachel. Don't act calm. You know what you did." I stepped aside and invited her in. Better to have this conversation privately than let neighbors hear her confessing to crimes in the hallway. "The audit," she said, walking around my small living room like a caged animal. "You called the board and convinced them to freeze the accounts. I shared some concerns about irregular transactions." Irregular. Every transaction was legal. Every payment was approved. Every expense has documentation. "I'm sure you have documentation." "I do," She pulled out her phone and started scrolling through files. Brandon and I have been building real business relationships. Management Services Group provides real consulting. Business Solutions LLC handles real administrative work. Real services from companies that only existed on paper. What kind of consulting? Financial optimization, process improvement, strategic planning. Things an old bookkeeper wouldn't understand. There it was again. Old bookkeeper. I walked to my desk and picked up a printed paper. The internet address log showing Rachel's apartment as the source of 22 fake transactions. Rachel, we need to talk about 192.168.1.105. Her face went pale. I don't know what that means. It's an internet address. Your internet address. The digital fingerprint left every time you accessed the fund from your apartment at 742 Maple Street. I handed her the printout. She stared at it like it was written in a foreign language. This is fake. It's from your internet company. Every online transaction creates a digital trail. Every login gets recorded. Every access gets documented. You can't prove anything. I walked back to my desk and picked up another paper. Bank security camera pictures showing Rachel making cash deposits. April 20th, 11:25 a.m. First Carolina Bank. You deposited $6,850 in cash. Her hands were shaking harder now. That was legitimate fund business. July 12th, 1:45 p.m. Same bank, same amount. Want to see the other 20 photos? Rachel collapsed into my desk chair, staring at the evidence like it was a death sentence. You don't understand. Brandon and I were trying to save the fund. Tommy was too generous and too trusting. He was giving money to people who didn't deserve it. Families with sick children didn't deserve help. Some of them were lying. Some of them were exaggerating how sick their kids were. Some of them could have paid for treatment if they'd made better choices in life. Better choices like choosing not to have their children get cancer. So you decided to redirect the money. We decided to be more careful, more strategic, more businesslike. Brandon knows how to run things efficiently. By stealing money and creating fake companies. By optimizing operations and cutting waste. The woman had convinced herself that embezzlement was business optimization. Rachel, you have 48 hours to confess. Confess to what? Embezzlement, fraud, conspiracy, tax evasion, money laundering. Should I continue? You can't prove any of that. I picked up the complete evidence file. 847 pages of bank records, security videos, internet logs, business papers, and technical analysis. I can prove all of it. For the first time since Tommy's funeral, Rachel looked truly scared. What do you want? I want the children's fund money returned. I want Brandon's fake companies closed. I want you to resign from the board. And if I don't, then this becomes a federal case. And Brandon's lawyer friends won't matter when FBI agents are putting handcuffs on both of you. Rachel stood up, trying to smooth her wrinkled clothes with trembling hands. You have no idea who you're dealing with, old lady. Neither do you. She made her choice at 11:15 that night. Rachel started her media campaign the next morning. By 8:30 a.m., she'd posted a crying video on Facebook explaining how her jealous mother-in-law was harassing her during her time of sadness. By 10:15 a.m., she was giving an interview to the local TV station about elder abuse and family problems. By noon, she'd started a GoFundMe page to raise money for lawyers to protect a grieving widow from harassment. The performance was perfect. Expensive tissues for the tears, good lighting for the video, carefully chosen words that painted me as an unstable old woman who couldn't accept her son's death. Margaret Mitchell has been calling my bank, my business partners, my neighbors, she told the morning news person. She's convinced I'm some kind of criminal because she can't accept that Tommy chose me over her. Chose me over her. The story was simple and effective. Bitter mother versus loving wife, old money versus new love, traditional family versus modern relationship. The online comments were brutal. This poor woman lost her husband and now has to deal with this. Typical old person who can't handle a strong young woman. Mother-in-law sounds jealous and controlling. She should get a restraining order. Rachel had done her homework. She knew that public opinion would side with a young widow over an elderly woman. She knew that age discrimination was socially acceptable. She knew people would assume the old lady was the problem. What Rachel didn't know was that her media campaign was creating new evidence. Every interview she gave, every statement she made, every detail she shared was being documented and analyzed. When people lie publicly, they usually contradict their private statements. Rachel was no exception. In her Facebook video, she claimed Tommy had been planning for months to leave everything to her. But in her TV interview, she said the will had been a complete surprise that she only discovered after his death. In her GoFundMe description, she wrote that Tommy's mother had never been involved in the children's fund. But in her radio interview, she admitted I'd been asking detailed questions about money management. In her morning call-in show, she said Brandon was just a friend giving emotional support. But her Instagram stories from the same day showed Brandon carrying boxes into Tommy's bedroom. Each lie created new problems. Each problem provided new evidence of lying. Better yet, Rachel's media campaign had attracted attention from investigative reporters. Channel 7's Consumer Help segment decided to look deeper into the Tommy Mitchell Children's Fund's finances. What they found was interesting. Public tax records showed the fund had received over $1.5 million in donations since Tommy's death. Companies, private donors, and charity events had poured money into the organization after Tommy's story became popular during his final months. But those same tax records showed strange patterns in recent spending. Large payments to companies with no obvious connection to helping sick children. Administrative costs that seemed way too high for the fund's mission. The reporters started asking questions. Who was Management Services Group? What services did Business Solutions LLC actually provide? Why had the fund's spending patterns changed so dramatically after Tommy's death? Rachel's response was predictable. She accused the media of harassment. She claimed the investigation was motivated by my manipulation. She demanded privacy during her time of grief. But the damage was done. Public records are public for a reason. Children's fund spending is required to be transparent. Financial problems don't disappear just because someone claims harassment. On Thursday night, my phone rang. Detective Amy Rodriguez from Charlotte Police Department's Financial Crimes Unit. Mrs. Mitchell, we need to talk. About what? About some interesting findings in a certain children's fund's financial records. Looks like someone's been making unauthorized transfers using fake authorization codes. I see. The thing is, these unauthorized transfers match a pattern we've been tracking across multiple charity organizations. Same amounts, same timing, same methods. We think someone's been running an organized embezzlement operation. An organized operation. Rachel and Brandon weren't just stealing from Tommy's fund. They were stealing from multiple charities. What do you need from me? Everything you've got. Documents, analysis, evidence. We're building a federal case, and your background makes you an ideal witness. Federal case. The words that transform local fraud into serious prison time. Detective, I have 847 pages of documentation ready for your review. Perfect. Can you come in tomorrow morning? And Mrs. Mitchell. Yes. Bring extra copies. Something tells me this is going to trial. Rachel's media campaign had backfired spectacularly. Instead of discrediting me, she'd attracted law enforcement attention to her crimes. The gala was tomorrow night. Time for the final move. I spent Friday morning at the police station, giving 847 pages of evidence to Detective Rodriguez and a federal prosecutor who'd driven from the FBI's Charlotte office. The case was bigger than I'd imagined. Rachel and Brandon had been running their operation across 7 different charity organizations in the Carolinas. Children's cancer funds, military family support groups, animal rescue shelters. They'd stolen over $350,000 from families and causes that needed it most. Their method was sophisticated. Brandon would identify charities with weak financial oversight and single-person management. Rachel would build relationships with the founders, usually targeting older people dealing with family tragedies. She'd offer emotional support, then gradually gain access to financial systems. Once inside, they'd create shell companies to receive fake payments, always under federal reporting limits, always with legitimate-sounding names, always with Brandon as the registered owner. They'd been perfecting the system for 3 years before Tommy got sick. Your son's fund was supposed to be their biggest score, the federal prosecutor explained. $1.8 million in assets, plus ongoing donations that could have funded their operation for years. Could have past tense. What happens now? We execute search warrants tonight after the gala. Multiple locations, multiple agencies. This is going to be a coordinated takedown. Why wait until after the gala? Detective Rodriguez smiled. Because your daughter-in-law is planning to announce the fund's expansion tonight. She's going to stand in front of 175 witnesses and claim credit for growing Tommy's legacy while stealing from it. And we'll have it all on video. The irony was perfect. Rachel's moment of triumph would become her moment of destruction. That afternoon, I reviewed Tommy's personal belongings one final time. Hidden in his desk drawer, I found something that broke my heart and completed the case at the same time. A journal. Tommy's handwriting documenting suspicious financial activity he'd noticed in his final months. April 20th. Our accessed fund account from home. Asked her about it. Says she was checking balances for tax prep. May 28th. Another large cash deposit to her personal account. Says it's from freelance marketing but can't name the client. June 22nd. Brandon asking detailed questions about fund management. Wants to know about board structure, audit rules, closure procedures. July 12th. Found bills for companies I don't recognize. Management Services Group charged $6,850 for strategic planning. No one told me about any strategic planning. August 18th. Are upset that I'm asking too many questions about finances. Says I don't trust her. Maybe I don't. Tommy had known. In his final months fighting cancer and preparing for death, my son had been trying to protect his children's fund from the woman sleeping next to him. The final entry was dated September 7th, 5 days before Tommy died. Mom knows about financial investigations. Should I tell her about our? Don't want to burden her while I'm so sick. Maybe I can handle this myself. Maybe after I'm gone, she'll figure it out. Tommy had been protecting me while I was trying to protect him. I took pictures of every page of that journal, evidence of Rachel's betrayal, but also evidence of my son's character. Even while dying, he'd been thinking about other families, trying to preserve resources that could help sick children fight the same battle he was losing. The gala was scheduled to begin in 4 hours. Rachel would take the stage at 8:30 p.m. sharp. According to the evening's program, she'd announce the fund's new direction, introduce Brandon as her strategic partner, and reveal plans to expand operations across the Southeast. 175 guests would clap for her vision. Local media would document her leadership. Business leaders would congratulate her innovation. And federal agents would be watching from the back of the room, waiting for her to finish confessing to conspiracy and fraud before they moved in with handcuffs. I dressed carefully for the evening. Navy dress, white cardigan, Tommy's favorite pearl necklace. I wanted to look respectable when I testified about my son's character and his fund's true mission. At 6:30 p.m., I received a text from Detective Rodriguez. Units ready. Warrants approved. Waiting for your signal. I drove to the Charlotte Garden Club where Rachel had rented the banquet hall for $12,000 that the Children's Fund couldn't afford. Valet parking that cost more per hour than most families spent on groceries. A fancy dessert bar featuring expensive chocolates that Tommy would never have approved. All paid for with money stolen from sick children. As I walked into the hall, I saw Rachel near the entrance greeting guests in a $2,500 designer gown and those same expensive accessories she'd bought with embezzled money. She saw me and smiled. Not a warm smile, a predator's smile. She thought she'd won. The gala was about to begin. The Charlotte Garden Club banquet hall buzzed with conversation as Charlotte's wealthy gathered to celebrate the Tommy Mitchell Children's Fund's bright future. 175 guests in evening clothes, local news cameras positioned carefully around the room, a projection screen showing photos of Tommy during his final months when he was still trying to help other families while fighting his own battle. Rachel stood at the microphone, glowing in her designer gown, looking like a grieving widow who'd turned tragedy into purpose. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming tonight to celebrate my late husband's legacy." Applause filled the room. I sat in the back, watching federal agents positioned near the exits, invisible to everyone except me. Tommy Mitchell believed that no family should face childhood illness alone, Rachel continued. He believed that with proper resources and smart management, we could help eliminate the financial destruction that too often comes with medical emergencies. More applause. She was excellent at this. Confident, well-spoken, emotionally moving. If I didn't know she was a thief, I might have believed her myself. Tonight, I'm proud to announce that the Tommy Mitchell Children's Fund has raised over $425,000 in new donations since Tommy's passing. Money that will help deserving families navigate their darkest hours. Deserving families. There was that phrase again. But more importantly, we're announcing a fundamental change in how we operate. Under new strategic leadership from Brandon Cooper and Management Services Group, we're implementing efficiency systems that will maximize every donor dollar. She pointed toward Brandon, who stood near the front in a perfectly tailored suit, smiling like he owned the room. Brandon brings 15 years of computer programming experience and proven expertise in financial optimization. Together, we've identified numerous areas where the fund was, honestly, too generous with unverified claims. Unverified claims like the medical bills from families with dying children. Moving forward, we'll require detailed documentation, independent verification, and strategic oversight for every dollar spent. No more emotional decision-making. No more wasteful spending on families who haven't used up all their own money first. The audience was loving it. Business efficiency applied to charity work. Accountability and oversight. Fancy words that sounded responsible and modern. What they were really hearing was Rachel explain how she planned to deny help to families in crisis while stealing their donations. In the past year and a half alone, we've identified over $150,000 in questionable spending that would never have passed our new verification systems. $150,700. The exact amount she'd embezzled. Rachel was standing in front of 175 witnesses and confessing to her crimes while claiming they were improvements. These funds have been redirected to legitimate consulting services, administrative oversight, and strategic planning that will ensure the fund's long-term sustainability. Redirected to Brandon's fake companies. I stood up. The movement caught Rachel's attention. Her confident smile disappeared for just a moment when she saw me. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, my voice carrying clearly across the silent hall. "My name is Margaret Mitchell. Tommy was my son." Whispers moved through the crowd. This wasn't part of the program. Miss Bennett has just confessed to embezzling $150,700 from families with sick children. The whispers turned to gasps. "She's lying," Rachel said into the microphone. "This woman has been harassing me for weeks, making up conspiracy theories because she can't accept that Tommy chose me over her." "I have evidence," I said, walking toward the front of the room. 847 pages of bank records, security videos, internet address logs, and business registration papers proving systematic fraud. "She's crazy," Rachel insisted. "Security, please remove this woman." But security wasn't moving. They were too busy staring at Detective Rodriguez and Agent Williams, who had just stepped forward, badges visible. "Miss Bennett," Detective Rodriguez said, "we need to have a conversation." The banquet hall erupted, guests turning to each other in confusion, cameras swinging toward the police officers, Rachel's face draining of color as she realized what was happening. "This is harassment," she said into the microphone. "I'm a grieving widow being persecuted by a bitter old woman and corrupt police. "Ma'am, please step away from the microphone," Agent Williams said. "No, I'm giving a speech. These people came to hear about Tommy's fund, not listen to conspiracy theories from." "We have a federal warrant for your arrest," Detective Rodriguez interrupted. "Conspiracy to commit fraud, embezzlement, money laundering, and tax evasion." The words echoed through the hall's sound system. Federal warrant, conspiracy, embezzlement, money laundering. Rachel's lawyer, who'd been sitting at a front table, stood up and started moving toward the exit. "Smart man. You can't arrest me," Rachel said. "I haven't done anything wrong. Every transaction was legal. Every payment was approved. By companies that don't exist," I said. "Using authorization codes you faked." Agent Williams approached the microphone with handcuffs. "Ma'am, you have the right to remain silent." "This is insane," Rachel screamed. "Brandon, tell them." But Brandon was already gone. He'd slipped out the back exit the moment badges appeared. "Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." Rachel's composure finally cracked completely. The elegant widow disappeared, replaced by a panicked criminal who just realized her life was over. "You have no idea what you've done," she screamed at me. "Tommy was dying anyway. That money would have been wasted on families whose kids were going to die anyway. We were making it useful by stealing it. Brandon and I built something real. We were helping the fund work efficiently. We were cutting waste." She kept talking, confessing to more crimes with every sentence while federal agents read her rights and cameras rolled. "You have the right to an attorney. If you cannot afford an attorney, I can afford 10 attorneys. I'm not some broke old lady who never accomplished anything. I'm a successful businesswoman who was trying to save a failing charity." The handcuffs clicked into place. The banquet hall was completely silent except for the sound of news cameras capturing every moment. Rachel Bennett Mitchell, the grieving widow who'd inherited millions, stood at the microphone in handcuffs, wearing a designer gown, having just confessed to multiple federal crimes in front of 175 witnesses and live television cameras. The reversal was complete. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, taking the microphone as federal agents led Rachel away. "The Tommy Mitchell Children's Fund will continue to help families with sick children under proper oversight, with legitimate expenses, and with zero tolerance for anyone who would steal from families in crisis." The applause started slowly, then built to a standing ovation. Through the hall windows, I could see Brandon being arrested in the parking lot. Apparently, federal agents had been watching both exits. As the crowd began to leave, shaking their heads and talking about what they'd just witnessed, Detective Rodriguez approached me. "Quite a way to spend an evening. Quite a way to honor my son's memory. The fund will be restructured with professional oversight and a legitimate board of directors. Every stolen dollar will be returned. Every family Rachel denied help will be contacted. And you." I looked around the hall where Tommy's photos still decorated the walls. My son smiling in hospital beds while he planned ways to help other families, fighting cancer with dignity while trying to protect resources for children facing the same battle. I'll make sure his real legacy continues. Outside, news vans were arriving. Rachel's media campaign had worked perfectly, just not the way she'd planned. 7 months later, I sat in the same federal courthouse where Rachel Bennett Mitchell accepted her plea agreement. 20 months in federal prison. Full payment back of $356,000 stolen from 7 different charities, permanent ban from serving on any charity board. Brandon Cooper got 2.5 years for conspiracy and money laundering. His computer programming skills turned out to be less useful when federal agents were analyzing his digital crimes. The Tommy Mitchell Children's Fund was restructured with a professional board of directors, independent financial oversight, and transparent reporting requirements. We'd not only recovered every stolen dollar, but donations had actually increased after the story went national. Apparently, people appreciated charity leaders who actually prosecuted thieves instead of tolerating them. Rachel's designer purse and watch were sold at federal auction. The money went to families with sick children. The irony was perfect. I'd moved back into Tommy's house. Rachel's boyfriend had abandoned the lease on her expensive apartment, and the property management company was happy to rent to someone who actually paid bills on time. The Children's Fund's new offices were located where Tommy's bedroom used to be. Every morning, I'd review applications from families facing childhood illness, approving legitimate medical bills and rent help. Real oversight, real accountability, real help for people who needed it. Turns out the quiet ones had built systems that thieves couldn't escape. But more importantly, we'd built something else. A fund that actually honored Tommy's memory instead of exploiting it. Resources that reached families instead of funding designer accessories. Hope for people fighting the same battle Tommy had faced with such dignity. Last week, I received a letter from a father in Asheville whose daughter was undergoing leukemia treatment. The fund had covered 4 months of rent while his family focused on medical care instead of eviction notices. "Your son saved my daughter," he wrote. "Thank you for making sure his legacy survived." Tommy's legacy had survived. Not because a thief had inherited his money, but because someone who loved him had fought to protect it. My phone buzzed with a text message from Agent Williams. "Margaret, got another case that could use your expertise. Financial fraud at an animal rescue charity. Interested?" I smiled and typed back a single word. "Absolutely." 35 years of following money trails never really retires. It just finds new ways to serve justice. But that night, as I sat in Tommy's room looking through old photo albums, I found a letter he'd written to me months before he died. It was sealed in an envelope marked, "Open after I'm gone, Mom." My hands trembled as I opened it. "Dear Mom, if you're reading this, I'm gone. And if Rachel tried something shady with the fund, I know you've already figured it out. That's what you do. You find the truth in numbers that other people can't see. I want you to know that I always knew how brilliant you were. Even when I was little and didn't understand what a tax investigator did, I knew my mom was the smartest person in any room. You taught me that numbers don't lie. That every dollar tells a story. That protecting people's money means protecting their dreams. The Children's Fund was my dream, Mom. Helping families who feel as scared and helpless as we felt when I got diagnosed. Making sure no kid goes without treatment because their parents can't afford it. If Rachel or anyone else tried to steal that dream, I know you stopped them. 'Cause that's what you do. You protect people. I love you, Mom. Thank you for everything. Thank you for raising me alone after Dad died. Thank you for working extra shifts so I could go to college. Thank you for teaching me that doing the right thing matters more than doing the easy thing. And thank you for being the kind of person who fights for what's right, even when it's hard. Keep helping families, Mom. Keep protecting kids. Keep being the hero you've always been. Love forever, Tommy." I sat there crying, holding my son's letter, understanding that he'd known all along. Known that Rachel was stealing. Known that I would figure it out. Known that I would fight to protect his dream. Tommy had trusted me to finish what he started. And I had. The Children's Fund was safe now. Families were being helped. Thieves were in prison. Justice had been served. But more than that, I'd honored my son's memory in the way that mattered most. By protecting the children he'd wanted to help. I carefully folded Tommy's letter and placed it in my desk drawer, right next to the case file that had brought Rachel and Brandon to justice. 847 pages that proved sometimes the quietest people are the most dangerous to cross. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about all the families Rachel had turned away in Tommy's name. All the children who'd been denied help because she deemed them undeserving. All the parents who'd been told their sick kids couldn't receive assistance because they hadn't exhausted their own resources first. So I started making calls. Using the fund's records, I tracked down every family Rachel had rejected in the past year. There were 23 of them. 23 families with sick children who'd been told the Tommy Mitchell Children's Fund couldn't help them. The first call was to Jennifer Martinez in Raleigh. Her 6-year-old son had brain cancer, and Rachel had rejected their application because Jennifer had a savings account with $3,000. Money she'd been saving for her son's college education. "Mrs. Martinez, this is Margaret Mitchell from the Tommy Mitchell Children's Fund. I'm calling to let you know your application has been reconsidered and approved. We'd like to cover your son's medical bills and provide 6 months of rent assistance. The silence on the other end lasted so long I thought the call had dropped. Then I heard crying. Are you serious? I thought we were denied. The woman who called said we had too much money in savings and should use that first. That woman no longer makes decisions for the fund. Your savings is for your son's future, not his medical bills. That's what the fund is for. 22 more calls like that. 22 families who'd been turned away by a thief. 22 families who would now receive the help Tommy had always intended them to have. By the end of the week, the Tommy Mitchell Children's Fund had approved $340,000 in assistance to families Rachel had rejected. Real families, real medical bills, real children fighting for their lives. This was what Tommy had dreamed of. This was what he'd worked so hard to build. This was what Rachel had nearly destroyed. But she hadn't succeeded. Because sometimes justice isn't about revenge. It's about restoration. It's about making things right. It's about protecting the vulnerable from the predators who see their suffering as opportunity. 3 months after Rachel's sentencing, I received a visitor at the fund's office. A young woman in her mid-20s, nervous and uncertain. Mrs. Mitchell. My name is Ashley Bennett. I'm Rachel's younger sister. I gestured for her to sit. Rachel's family had been silent since the arrest, and I'd wondered if they believed her claims of persecution. I wanted to apologize, Ashley said immediately. For my sister. For what she did. For the families she hurt. You're not responsible for your sister's choices. I know. But I should have seen it. Should have questioned it. She was always like this. Charming and manipulative and always looking for shortcuts. But I never thought she'd steal from sick children. Ashley pulled out an envelope. This is $15,000. It's everything I have in savings. I want to donate it to the fund. I know it doesn't make up for what Rachel stole, but... Ashley, you don't need to do this. Yes, I do. Because when I heard what Rachel did, I felt sick. And then I heard about you, about how you caught her, about how you rebuilt the fund, about how you're helping families she turned away. You're the kind of person my sister should have been. The kind of person I want to be. I looked at this young woman, this innocent member of a guilty family, trying to make amends for crimes she didn't commit. Ashley, I'll accept your donation on one condition. Anything. That you join the fund's board of directors. We need people who understand that helping others isn't about efficiency or optimization. It's about compassion. Ashley's eyes filled with tears. Really? After what my sister did, you'd trust me. Your sister's crimes don't define you. Your choices do. And you just chose to help children instead of yourself. 6 months after that, Ashley became the fund's youngest board member and most passionate advocate. She brought energy and fresh ideas, but more importantly, she brought something else. A determination to prove that the Bennett name could mean something good. At our 1-year anniversary celebration, Ashley stood at the same microphone where Rachel had been arrested and told a very different story. Last year, my sister stood here and lied about helping children while stealing from them. Today, I'm standing here to tell you about the 512 families we've helped in the past year. The 512 children who received medical care because of this fund. The 512 families who didn't have to choose between medicine and rent. The applause was genuine this time. No handcuffs, no arrest, just honest people doing honest work to help vulnerable families. After the celebration, I drove to Oakwood Cemetery where Tommy was buried. I sat by his headstone like I did every week, updating him on the fund's progress. We helped 512 families this year, Tommy. More than you ever did in a single year. The fund is growing. The board is strong. Ashley is amazing, you'd like her. And Mom finally learned how to use Instagram to promote fundraisers, though I'm still not very good at it. I smiled, imagining Tommy laughing at his technology-challenged mother trying to navigate social media. Rachel got out on good behavior last month. 20 months became 14 with time served and good conduct. Brandon got out 2 weeks ago. I heard they're no longer together. Apparently, prison tests relationships. I paused, thinking about the woman who'd changed our locks during Tommy's funeral. I don't hate her, Tommy. I feel sorry for her. She had everything: a loving husband, a meaningful mission, a chance to make a real difference. And she threw it all away for designer purses and expensive watches. She chose greed over grace. But you chose differently. You chose to spend your final months thinking about other families instead of yourself. You chose to build something that would outlive you. You chose love over selfishness. And that choice changed 512 lives this year alone. As I stood to leave, I noticed something I hadn't seen before: a small toy truck placed at the base of Tommy's headstone. There was a note attached. Mr. Tommy made my little brother smile during his chemo. This was his favorite truck. He wanted Mr. Tommy to have it in heaven. Thank you for making the medicine free. Love, Sophia, age 7. I picked up the toy truck carefully. This gift from a child to my child. This connection between two families touched by cancer and compassion. This was Tommy's real legacy. Not money or property or business assets, but hope, but healing, but the knowledge that even in our darkest moments, someone cares enough to help. I placed the truck back at the headstone and walked to my car, thinking about the 847-page report that had brought justice, the 512 families that had received help, and the one son who taught his mother that the most important numbers aren't in bank accounts, they're in lives changed. My phone rang as I drove home. Detective Rodriguez. Margaret, I hate to bother you, but we've got a situation. Retirement home in Wilmington. Director's been skimming from residents' accounts. Elderly victims who can't advocate for themselves. Could really use your expertise. I thought about those elderly victims, vulnerable and voiceless, being exploited by someone they trusted. I thought about Tommy teaching me that protecting people means fighting for those who can't fight for themselves. I thought about how retirement doesn't mean giving up. It just means choosing new battles. Send me the details, I said. I'll start reviewing the accounts tonight. 'Cause that's what we do. We protect the vulnerable. We expose the corrupt. We fight for justice, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. 3 years later, I stood in front of a congressional committee in Washington, D.C., testifying about charity fraud and the need for stronger oversight regulations. The Tommy Mitchell Children's Fund had become a model for transparent, accountable charitable operations. Our story, the theft, the investigation, the prosecution, the restoration, had been featured in major news outlets and prompted legislative review. Mrs. Mitchell, the committee chairwoman asked, what would you say to other families who discover theft in organizations they trusted? I thought carefully before answering. I'd say that feeling overwhelmed is normal. Feeling powerless is understandable. But giving up is not an option. Because every dollar stolen from a charity is a dollar stolen from someone who desperately needs help. Every fraudulent transaction represents a family that didn't receive medical care, a child that didn't get medicine, a person whose suffering was exploited for someone else's greed. We have a responsibility to fight back. Not for revenge but for restoration. Not to punish the guilty, but to protect the innocent. The chairwoman nodded. And what advice would you give to charity leaders to prevent this kind of fraud? 3 things. First, never have single-person financial control. Always require multiple approvals for expenditures. Second, conduct regular independent audits by outside professionals. Third, and most importantly, remember that efficiency is not the goal. Impact is. Rachel justified her theft by claiming she was making the fund more efficient. But charity isn't about efficiency. It's about compassion. It's about helping people, not optimizing processes. The moment we prioritize business metrics over human need, we've lost our mission. My testimony helped pass the Charitable Accountability and Transparency Act, requiring stricter oversight for nonprofit organizations nationwide. Tommy's story, his fund, his legacy had changed not just 512 families, but the entire system. That evening, I received a call from Linda Chen, my old colleague from the tax investigation days. Margaret, I just watched your testimony. You were magnificent. Tommy would be so proud. Thank you, Linda. None of this would have been possible without your help with the ink analysis. Oh please, you did all the real work. I just confirmed what you already knew. But Margaret, I have to ask, are you ever going to actually retire? You're 68 years old. You've earned your rest. I laughed. Linda, I tried retirement. I sat on my porch for exactly 3 weeks before I got bored. This isn't work, it's purpose. Every case I help solve means vulnerable people are protected. Every thief we catch means donations go to their intended purpose. How could I retire from that? Fair enough. So what's next? There's a veterans charity in Tennessee showing suspicious patterns, and a children's hospital foundation in Florida with concerning expenditure reports, and an animal rescue in Georgia that— Say no more, Linda interrupted, laughing. You're incorrigible. The world's oldest crusader for justice. Not the oldest. There's a 72-year-old forensic accountant in Oregon who just caught a massive non-profit fraud ring. She's my hero. After hanging up, I walked to Tommy's old room, now the fund's office, and looked at the wall of photos. Not pictures of me or Rachel or the investigation. Pictures of families. The 512 families we'd helped that first year. The 847 families we'd helped in the second year. The 1,203 families we'd helped in the third year. Each photo with a name, a story, a child whose life was changed because Tommy chose compassion over indifference. Because I chose justice over silence. Because Ashley chose redemption over shame. Because a community chose generosity over apathy. In the center of the wall was Tommy's photo, my son in his hospital bed, smiling despite his pain, planning his children's fund even as his own body failed him. Underneath the photo was a quote he'd written in his journal. We can't cure every cancer. We can't save every child. We can't solve every problem. But we can make sure that families facing the worst moments of their lives know they're not alone. That's not everything, but it's something. And something is enough. Something is enough. Tommy's philosophy, his mission, his legacy. I picked up my laptop and opened the email from the Tennessee Veterans Charity case. Time to turn something into everything for another group of vulnerable people. Because that's what quiet people do. We observe. We analyze. We document. We build cases. We seek justice. And when necessary, we smile knowingly at those who underestimate us, walk away calmly, and prepare 847-page reports that change everything. Rachel had called me an old-fashioned bookkeeper. She dismissed me as a sad old lady. She'd assumed that age meant irrelevance and retirement meant incompetence. She'd made the same mistake that every criminal I'd ever caught had made, confusing quiet with weak, confusing kindness with stupidity, confusing patience with powerlessness. But 35 years of following money trails had taught me something important. The loud ones tell you what they want you to hear. The quiet ones discover what you don't want them to know. 5 years after Rachel's arrest, I received one final letter. From Rachel herself. Dear Margaret, I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I'm not making excuses. There are none. I just wanted you to know that prison gave me time to think about what I did. About the families I hurt. About Tommy's dream that I destroyed for designer purses. About your son who deserved better than me. You were right about everything. I chose greed over grace. I prioritized things over people. I saw suffering as opportunity instead of tragedy requiring compassion. I can't undo what I did. I can't return those years to the families I denied help. I can't apologize adequately to the children who went without medicine because I wanted expensive jewelry. But I can tell you this. Watching you rebuild what I destroyed taught me more about strength and character than I learned in my entire life before prison. You could have been cruel. You could have been vindictive. You could have made my punishment worse than it was. Instead, you focused on restoration. On helping the families I hurt. On honoring Tommy's real legacy. That's the kind of person I should have been. The kind of person I'm trying to become. I don't expect you to care. I just wanted you to know. Rachel. I read the letter 3 times, thinking about redemption and consequences, about justice and mercy, about the difference between punishment and restoration. Then I did something Rachel probably never expected. I wrote back, "Rachel, you're right. You hurt families who needed help. You betrayed Tommy's trust. You exploited vulnerability for personal gain. Those are facts that can't be changed. But facts aren't the end of the story. The fact is, you went to prison. The fact is, you paid your debt to society. The fact is, you're trying to become better. Those are facts too. I'm not offering you a position on the fund's board. I'm not asking you to volunteer. I'm not pretending that apologies erase crimes. But I'm telling you that if you're serious about becoming the person you should have been, there are organizations that help former inmates rebuild their lives. I've attached information about 3 programs that could use volunteers. People who understand mistakes, consequences, and the hard work of redemption. The choice is yours. It always has been. Margaret." 6 months later, I heard that Rachel was volunteering at a halfway house, helping women recently released from prison navigate job applications and housing assistance. Turns out even thieves can choose differently when given the chance. And that's the real lesson Tommy taught me. Not that some people are heroes and others are villains. But that every person, every moment, every choice is an opportunity to be better than we were before. To choose compassion over convenience. To choose service over selfishness. To choose love over literally anything else. That's my son's real legacy. Not the money in the children's fund accounts. Not the families we've helped. Not the thieves we've caught. But the simple truth that even in our darkest moments, we can choose light. We can choose kindness. We can choose to be the person who helps instead of the person who hurts. And that choice, that simple daily decision to be better, changes everything. My name is Margaret Mitchell. I'm 68 years old. I'm a mother, a grandmother, a retired tax investigator, and the director of the Tommy Mitchell Children's Fund. And I'm still fighting for families who can't fight for themselves. 'Cause that's what love looks like. This is Granny's voice, and this is my story.